It's the Big E Sports Extravaganza.
It's a tradition.
Your weekly destination for all things going on in the sports universe. We don't just talk X's and O's. We go beyond them. Bringing you some of the most engaging guests from around the nation. Fasten your seatbelts. It's showtime. Now, here's your hostess with the mostest, Elissa Walker-Campbell.
Hey, welcome back to the Big E Sports Show. I'm your host, Elissa Walker-Campbell, and the NFL is heating up heading into Week 5, and there is certainly no shortage of storylines. You've got surprise teams, injury developments, and much-watch matchups this weekend. Certainly one of the biggest shocks, we're going to talk about it, is Tyreek Hill is out for the season after suffering a knee injury, and we've got a lot more to dig into. We are so thrilled to have joining us for the very first time from NFL.com. That is Eric Edholm from the Windy City. Hello, Eric. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, let's lead off. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. Can their offense finally find consistency, or are the struggles deeper than just play calling and execution? The Bears right now are 2-2.
Yeah, the last, I would say, 2 games have kind of changed the little bit. You know, obviously they kind of pulled into their bye week with some, plenty of questions about the offensive line. They've had to make some changes there, benching their starting left tackle. The run game's been a little inconsistent. Caleb Williams will look great one series, so the next, and so on and so forth. But I will say I've seen growth, especially in the last couple minutes of halves when, it's sort of got to have it time. I feel like Ben Johnson's play calling has been very good. He's schemed open receivers, and Williams has more often than not made the throws. There are times when his accuracy kind of evades him a little bit, a little high, a little low, a little wide. But he's starting to kind of clean that up a little bit. The kick block at the end of the Vegas win was obviously a big moment for them, and they kind of had to have that one, I think. Otherwise, pulling into the bye at 1-3 really hurts. I would say after the way the season started and the disappointing loss in Detroit, it seems like they've kind of turned things in the right direction.
Well, let's talk some more about quarterback Caleb Williams and just his development so far. Is he, would you say, progressing at the pace that Chicago fans were hoping for?
Well, I would say that, being here around the city, the minute that they get up into that position, I should say when they had the pick that they knew was going to end up being Caleb Williams, I should say. Everyone around here expected fireworks right away.
Yeah.
They thought they were getting a generational talent, somebody that comes around once a decade. I don't think it's proven to be that way, especially with Jaden Daniels, excelling the number 2 pick, Drake May, the number 3 pick's done well, Bo Nix, et cetera, et cetera. So there have been other quarterbacks from that draft class who played as well or perhaps even better than Williams. I think patience really wore out by the end of last season, but it's starting to be restored, I think. That's what the Ben Johnson hire was all about, getting Caleb right or figuring out, is Caleb the right guy that we need to sign to a massive extension in a couple of years? And, we don't know that answer yet. I know some Bears fans will say, of course we do. We've invested so much in both guys. But, we've seen time and time again, quarterback situations can fall apart. If that relationship with the head coach isn't there, a good season followed by a bad season can change everything. Sour expectations, turn fans off, whatever. And I don't think that relationship is by any means broken. I don't want to suggest that. I'm just saying we don't know. But I would guess that after some challenges along the way,
yeah,
I think that they've started to kind of peek through the over the horizon and start to see some daylight.
Well, Eric, do you think that the Bears are doing enough schematically to play to Williams' strengths, or are they still just trying to figure that out? Now you got a new head coach.
Right. That's a great question. And I think, I believe every head coach needs to tailor his offense to who their quarterback is.
Sure.
Obviously, everybody's got a unique set of skills. And, if they're athletic, you want to make sure you take advantage of that. If they're strong arm, you want to ask them to make throws that, a weaker arm quarterback wouldn't attempt, all that stuff. And, when do they perform best? What are the spots you want to try to keep them out of? That's all part and parcel. So we say Ben Johnson is bringing his offense to Chicago. Well, he brought a playbook, but now he's got to slim it down and cater it and craft it to Williams' skills, just like he would if Tyson Bagent was under center. I still wonder if Caleb is a perfect fit for the offense that we saw in Detroit, where it was timing, rhythm, precision, everything kind of operating on schedule. Whereas Williams, as a player, I think likes to color outside the lines a little, right? He's a creator. He's an innovator. And sometimes that backfires, sometimes it bears fruit, but that's a yet to be determined answer. But I do think that Johnson has shown a little bit more willingness to kind of leave things open for Caleb and trust him to use his instincts in those situations.
What do you think is the biggest leap, though, that you have seen from Caleb Williams from year 1 to year 2? Just give us your assessment in terms of that.
Pocket recognition. I mean, understanding that he can't sit back there all day and wait for somebody to open up. First of all, you're asking your receivers to give kind of maximum, effort on every single play. And I think that was a problem last year. If a quarterback's sitting back in the pocket, trying to survey, wait, trying to get that play, that big shot play open, you're asking your receivers to run an extra 8, 10, 15, 12 yards on almost every play. So that, along with your pass blockers, you can't ask them to hold the best pass rushers in the league clean and free for that long. So major difference in that department. Getting rid of the ball quicker, processing faster, seeing things before they happen, tape study. I think one of the interviews with Williams after the season last year with the former coaching staff, he mentioned, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was looking for when I was watching tape. So I think that has helped. And I think Williams also, self-preservation wise, not taking quite as many hits and sacks, is going to do him a lot of good as well.
Well, Eric, you bring up a great point, because just how important has chemistry been with his receivers, especially coming into this season? He's got to be able to connect.
Yeah, I mean, Rome Odunze has been a real pleasant surprise. I mean, they've I think they knew how special he could be when they drafted him as high as they did, number 9 or 10 overall, whatever it was. But he's becoming a star, I think, and becoming one of the best receivers in the league. The question is whether, they view DJ Moore long-term as a key component of this team. I'm not saying he can't play. Of course he can. But, you've seen him almost take a little bit of a back seat to Odunze. They drafted Colston Loveland, a tight end, in round 1. Luther Burden, a receiver, in round 2. Neither one of those guys are ready to take on the role that Moore plays, or even combined. They're probably not going to have the same output, but in a year or two, maybe. So for me, the relationship with Odunze has really grown. You've also seen Williams trust Cole Kmet a little bit more in some of these situations this year. The offense is the offense. It's meant to go to where the open receiver is. And I think that's the biggest thing about Ben's offense. He doesn't care who's getting it as long as that player has a chance to gain some yards and is open. So that's the backbone of it. But when you have a player of Rome's ability, I think you also have to make sure he gets his touches. So I think the chemistry's been pretty good. It's better than last year so far.
It is week 5 of the NFL season. We are going one-on-one with NFL.com's Eric Edholm. Give him a follow on X at Eric with a C _Edholm. And hey, we hit on your home team, and that, of course, is the Chicago Bears. Let's talk about the Texans. We're down here in Houston. And give us your assessment of C.J. Stroud, just the growth in year 3. What do you see so far?
Yeah, I mean, with CJ, the way he played his rookie year, I think the bar was set pretty high.
Yeah.
Right? We were kind of wondering whether this might be one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL eventually, if not at that point. Last year, obviously, a disappointment from that standpoint. It wasn't all on him. And they've tried so long to figure this offensive line thing out, like to make sure that they have the right 5 guys and, if necessary, 6th and 7th guys, because injuries do happen. So getting that chemistry up front, finding the right play caller. Obviously, they kind of scapegoated the offensive coordinator last year. Kaylee's come in and not exactly blown up the scoreboard so far. So how do they get more points? They have to create more opportunities for themselves. What have they been in the red zone 5-6 times all season? That, being able to kind of consistently move the ball into a scoring position is one of them. 3rd down conversions. They had I think Nico Collins is a terrific player, but they've also had some critical turnovers in key moments. The late fumble against LA, and then a couple weeks later, a late fumble as well, turnovers. So some of it is Stroud not sort of taking that proverbial step forward and making those kind of year 3 type plays. But also, I think you have to look at new play caller, still unsettled offensive line, I argue, a lack of true game-changing receivers. But the hope is that maybe Woody Marks can provide a a little more, lift in the offense and, maybe one or two other wide receivers like, some of the two kids they drafted from Iowa State, Jalen Noel, Higgins, they can help kind of boost the offense as well. So I'm not ready to give up on CJ. He was my favorite quarterback in that class ahead of Bryce Young.
Oh, wow.
Much,
okay.
I had him ahead of him.
Yeah.
And I still think there's some upside for him.
Okay, Eric, we have highlighted and talked about Stroud, but we're hearing no timetable for Joe Mixon's return. I mean, how far can they go realistically without Joe?
Pretty good last week. So, again, Joe Mixon's a good NFL running back, but I also think he's kind of on the back half of his career, given the heavy workload he's had, and now this sort of injury complicating things. And, I realized how important he was to the operation, how important he was viewed this season as well. But there's a reason why they drafted this kid. And I was a little bit, I don't want to say ambivalent about him, but there were some things I liked, some things I didn't like. But last week, I thought he looked really good, catching the football, looking confident, turning 2-yard losses into a 5-yard gain. That's a skill. That's an art that goes overlooked a little bit at the running back position. I thought, for a first extended play, if you will, he made a good claim to be the lead back going forward. We'll see. Obviously, if you have Chubb, Mixon, and Marks at some point, you're in a great spot. You can sort of decide who gets what allocation of the carries and all that. But I think right now, Woody's going to get the ball. And until we get a little more clarity on Joe's situation, I think they're going to maybe force feed him a little bit.
Hey, we're winding down our time with NFL.com's Eric Edholm, and we want you to weigh in on Tyreek Hill. He is out for the season with that devastating knee injury. Just how big of a blow is this for the Dolphins, and how is this going to impact them in terms of playoff chances?
Yeah, no, obviously it's a big blow, and such a complicated situation overall, right? We weren't even sure if he was going to be a Dolphin this season. He ends up reprising his role as the lead guy, and they start the season in a stumble. So even with the win against the Jets, it came with the rather sobering news that Hill wasn't going to be a part of it. Look, Jalen Waddle has to step up. He's the guy they took at the number 6 pick overall. He's been good as a compliment, as a Robin to the Batman sort of thing. But now he's, put in the crosshairs. Darren Waller, who hadn't played in a year, came in last week, caught 2 touchdowns, and had the onside kick at the end too. So maybe he can develop into a weapon as well. And, they have a few other guys that they've held back a little bit, who I think have a little bit more potential. Washington, I think, could end up being a pretty good playmaker for him. But yeah, there's no doubt this takes a little of the teeth out of the offense, even if Hill wasn't always a reliable performer the last couple of years. So, Mike McDaniel's under the gun a little bit. I think he's playing for his job to some respect, and the future of the Dolphins kind of hangs in the balance. Tua, we don't know if he's sort of big picture, long-term going to be their quarterback. Hill, year-to-year thing with him. Obviously, this could be something that affects next season. The injury could last that long. It's a serious injury. So they've got a lot to figure out, and I would not be shocked if his days in Miami are over.
So many different storylines going on in the NFL. Final question for you, Eric, is why in the world did the Giants wait until week 4 to hand that starting job to Jackson Dart instead of giving him the reins to kick off the 2025 season? What say you?
Yeah, it was a tricky call for Brian Daboll, another coach that I think is sort of playing, coaching for his job, if you will, and 2 disappointing years in a row. Some thought he might have been fired in the offseason. He wasn't. John Mara brought him back. They trade up for Dart at the end of round 1, and, it feels inevitable. He's going to get the starting job at some point. And a lot of people looked at the schedule and said, well, they play at New Orleans week 5. That's probably the spot to put him in. They end up doing it a week early, and the results, he looked pretty darn good, right? Running the ball, throwing fairly effectively. Now everybody's saying, why didn't you do it sooner? It's a tough thing for a head coach because you have Russell Wilson, you have Jameis Winston, so both guys have started, combined almost 300 games in the NFL. So, there's that factor, the experience factor. If you're a coach who needs to win games, do you trust a rookie fresh off the bus, or do you go with the veteran? I think he played it the way a lot of people would have played it. Give it to Russell, let him work, but it didn't really happen. Other than the second half of the Dallas game, Wilson struggled, and his athleticism wasn't what it was. That's why I think we're forced to make the move and speed up the timetable a little. So we'll see if it's the right decision. I think they kind of had to. There wasn't much time left to play around. So we'll see if they can come up with a second straight win against a winless Saints team this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. The Giants 1-3 will face New Orleans, who have yet to win this year. Noon Central Time on CBS. We've been going one-on-one with NFL.com, Eric Edholm, and of course, give him a follow on X at Eric with a C _Edholm. Good stuff, Eric. We look forward to another conversation real soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care.